On a
Effective
Tuesday,
immediately,
she
Miss
laid her
Chung has
father
been
to
removed
rest.
from the board of
Her
directors
husband was there,
following the
but
discovery
kept a
of
cold
significant
3 feet
financial
between them,
irregularities.
under
To
his
the
own
future,
separate
darling.
umbrella. By Wednesday morning, he was filing for
And to
divorce.
us.
And on Friday, he was already
This
married
is
to another
strictly a
woman.
business matter now.
But he made a monumental
My lawyers will be
mistake.
in touch.
He never imagined that the quiet
Please, you
janitor
can't do
who had
this.
raised his wife was secretly a billionaire. So when he proudly escorted his new bride into a high society gala, he was stepping into a trap that would completely unravel his life. Before we get into this story, I want to ask you something. If you have ever been overlooked because you chose to be quiet and observant, tell me where you are watching from in the comments. We are about to find out if qualities like loyalty and patience still hold any power, because the events that follow will challenge everything you think you know. This story will teach you one of the most powerful lessons about wealth, patience, and character. By the end, you will understand why the quietest people in the room are often the most dangerous to underestimate, and why true power never needs to announce itself. He was no longer breathing on his own. Machines were doing the work for him. Maya gripped the cold metal rail of the hospital bed, her knuckles turning white as she listened to the unnatural sounds of life. There was a hiss from the ventilator and a steady beep from the monitor, all under the dull hum of the overhead lights. She could see his chest rise and fall in a steady rhythm, but she knew it was just the machine. "Daddy," she whispered, her face so close she could smell the sterile scent on his skin. "Please fight for me, just one more time." She held his hand, which felt warm and rough, with the calluses from a lifetime of hard work. The strength was still there to hold on, but not enough to wake up. The doctor's vocabulary was gentle, using phrases like declining and unresponsive. But those words were just soft cushions for a hard truth. Her father was slipping away, and no careful phrasing could alter that reality. For 48 hours, she had not left his side. Sleep was impossible, and food was an afterthought. She survived on bitter coffee and the painful discomfort of the waiting room furniture. Her husband, Marcus, sent 2 text messages. The first asked if she needed anything. The second announced he would be late. She ignored both. Beyond the hospital walls, life went on. Cars honked, people laughed, and the world did not seem to care that her own was collapsing. In that quiet room, time itself seemed to slow down, becoming a heavy weight pressing on her chest, testing her limits. She was raised by her father, and her father alone. He never asked for help or complained, offering only a dependable, quiet love that was present every single day. He taught her practical things, like how to tie her shoes at age 7 and how to change a flat tire at 12. When she was 16, he taught her that the loudest people are often the ones with nothing important to say. So when she announced her engagement at 23, he did not immediately celebrate. Instead, he observed Marcus carefully during dinner, asking probing questions that seemed harsh at the time. Afterward, he hugged her and said, "I trust you to know your own heart." He never said he trusted Marcus, only that he trusted her. The distinction was lost on her then, but it was becoming painfully clear now. A nurse entered the room silently to check the machines and adjust the tubes. She avoided looking at Maya, her professional distance a sign that she had witnessed this scene many times before. The phone in Maya's pocket vibrated, but she paid it no mind. Suddenly, she saw her father's fingers move. Her heart leaped as she shot up from her chair. "Dad?" His lips parted slightly, forming words without sound. She moved closer, straining to catch any whisper. He forced out 3 slow, final words. "Go to bank." In the next instant, the alarms on the monitors blared to life. The room filled with medical staff, and Maya was gently guided into the hall. She stood there, helpless, waiting for the official word. she did not need to hear. Her father was gone, and his last words made no sense. Growing up, Maya assumed all fathers worked 2 jobs. Her father certainly did. She could picture him walking through the door after a long day, exhausted, but always managing a warm smile just for her. She believed all dads were skilled at repairing leaky pipes and telling the best bedtime stories. Because hers was, his life was a routine of work. A janitor at the school by day, and a maintenance man at the church 3 nights a week. On weekends, he helped neighbors with repairs. They often paid with warm meals, heartfelt thanks, and genuine admiration. He never showed any sign of fatigue or frustration. He would simply work, come home, cook dinner, and listen to her talk about her day as if it were the most important news in the world. They lived in a tiny 1-bedroom apartment, and that bedroom belonged to her. For 16 years, the sofa was his bed, and he never made her feel like it was a sacrifice. Their possessions were few, but everything they owned was kept spotless and orderly. Her father folded his work uniforms with the same care a banker might fold a dress shirt. Every Sunday evening, he would meticulously polish his boots. On their refrigerator, a calendar marked all of her school activities with red circles, and he was present for every single one. While other children had parents who arrived in fancy suits and expensive cars, her father came in his work clothes, a faint smell of cleaning solution still on him. He always sat in the back, trying not to draw attention. But she was never ashamed, because at her recitals, when other parents were distracted by their phones, her father's eyes were fixed only on her. He passed on knowledge that seemed unusual for a simple janitor. He taught her how to analyze a legal contract. He showed her how to tell if a person was being dishonest by observing their hands instead of their face. He explained how to enter a room and quickly identify who had genuine influence versus who was just posturing. "Money makes a lot of noise, baby girl," he would tell her while washing dishes. "But a person's true character is a quiet whisper, and the best people are the ones who listen for that whisper." Much of his wisdom was beyond her understanding at the time, but every word stayed with her. The day she received her college acceptance letter, he cried. They were not tears of sorrow, but tears of pure pride that seemed to smooth away the tired lines on his face. "You are going to achieve things I never could," he told her. "You did everything," she replied. He simply shook his head. "No, I made a different choice. There is a distinction." She never pressed him to explain, a decision she now deeply regretted. Looking back, she could see a pattern of oddities that never fit together. His articulate speech, the advanced books he read, the fact that the tellers at their bank always greeted him by name. Her father was not a janitor by circumstance. He was a janitor on purpose, and she was on the verge of learning why. The day of his burial, it rained. It was not a gentle, mournful drizzle. It was a harsh, angry downpour that drenched clothing and turned the soil to mud, as if the heavens themselves were furious. 6 months pregnant, Maya stood by the open grave while Marcus remained next to her, holding his own umbrella. She noticed it immediately, not because she was looking for romance. She noticed because when a strong gust of wind nearly pushed her over, he made no effort to shield her from the rain. He stayed perfectly dry, his attention on his phone. One by one, mourners approached her with hugs and empty condolences. "He is in a better place. His suffering is over." She simply nodded and offered thanks, letting them believe their words helped. But her heart screamed that the better place was right here, with her. He was supposed to be here to see her become a mother. He was supposed to meet his grandchild. He was just supposed to stay. During the funeral, she saw Marcus glance at his watch twice. When the pastor invited people to share a memory, her husband said nothing. Maya spoke about her father's hands, how they were constantly in motion, repairing things, building things, and offering a steady comfort when hers shook. Her emotions overwhelmed her midway through, and she could not continue. Marcus offered no comfort as the casket was lowered. She moved to toss a single rose on top. Her heels immediately sank into the soft, wet earth. She lost her balance. An elderly woman from their church quickly grabbed her arm to support her. "I have you, dear," the woman whispered. Her own husband was oblivious. Following the service, everyone went to the church for food. There were sandwiches nobody wanted and coffee that grew cold in flimsy paper cups. The sound of conversation seemed jarringly loud. Maya found a quiet corner to sit, feeling drained. She gently massaged her belly. The baby was kicking more than usual, this time as if it sensed the tension. After 20 minutes, Marcus came over. "I have to leave," he stated. She looked at him, bewildered. "Now? It is that work matter I mentioned last week." She had no memory of it. It was possible he had told her. Her grief could have wiped the memory clean. In the end, it made no difference. "All right," she answered softly. He gave her a brief, mechanical kiss on her forehead that meant nothing. "I will be home later tonight," he promised. But he never came home. By 10 o'clock that night, she was sitting alone in their silent apartment, still dressed in her funeral clothes. She stared at her phone, waiting for a message that never arrived. There was no call, no text, just an awful silence that brought a chilling realization. The man she buried today was the only one who had ever truly been there for her. Her marriage had been over for a long time. She had simply refused to face it. The clock was nearing midnight when she finally forced herself to change out of her dark dress and get ready for bed. Her body ached, but her thoughts refused to quiet down. She picked up her phone, a familiar habit, and began to scroll mindlessly, desperate for any distraction from the twin realities that her father was dead and her husband was not home. That is when the picture appeared on her screen. It showed Marcus at a restaurant she knew well. It was an expensive place with intimate lighting and candles. Seated across from him was an unfamiliar woman. It was clearly not a business meeting. The woman was young and impeccably put together, radiating a kind of beauty that required both money and time. The other woman was leaning forward, her laugh echoing something he had just said. He was tilted back in his chair, completely at ease, with a smile Maya had not seen on his face for months. The caption simply read, "New Beginnings," with emojis of clinking glasses and sparkles. The post was only an hour old. Maya stared at her phone screen until the image went blurry. The tears did not come immediately. She just sat there, phone in hand, feeling the frantic beat of her own heart in her throat. Her father had been buried for less than 12 hours, and her husband was already out celebrating a new start. She tapped on the woman's profile. Isabel Chun, a marketing executive with 73,000 followers. Every single picture was a perfect advertisement for a life that Maya knew she could never have. Maya scrolled back, looking at Marcus's recent online activity. He had been liking Isabella's posts for the last 3 months. He left comments that were a little too familiar, a pattern that she had either been too trusting or simply too exhausted to see. Her hands began to tremble, but it was not from sorrow. It was a sharper feeling, like her body was finally acknowledging what her mind had been desperately trying to ignore. She stood up, walked into the bathroom, and held on to the edge of the sink, staring at her own reflection. Pregnant, worn out, and utterly alone, married to a man who did not even have the decency to wait one full day after her father's funeral before taking another woman to dinner. She did not break anything, she did not yell, and she did not call him. She stood perfectly still, breathing slowly, and felt the baby stir inside her. After a moment, she returned to the bed, placed her phone on the nightstand, and simply waited. Marcus finally came home at 2:14 in the morning. She heard the front door open, the sound of his keys hitting the counter, and his footsteps coming down the hall. He did not come in to check on her. He went directly into the guest room. In that moment, Maya understood that their marriage was already over. She just did not realize how much worse things were about to become. He waited until the morning to talk, not out of any sense of kindness, but because cowards prefer to do their dirty work in the daylight. Maya was in the kitchen, looking at a cup of coffee she had no intention of drinking. When Marcus came in, he looked well-rested, freshly showered, and composed, as if he had practiced for this. "We need to talk," he said. She gave no reply, her eyes fixed on him, waiting. He took the seat across from her, folding his hands on the table, as if they were in a business negotiation. "I think it is clear to both of us that this is not working," he began. A pit formed in her stomach, but her expression remained a perfect mask. "I have been unhappy for a long time, and I believe you have been, too. We just refuse to face the truth." A bitter laugh almost escaped her. "We?" As if this decision was mutual, as if she had been the one creating distance between them. "I want a divorce," he stated. The words were flat, final. There was no hesitation, no hint of regret. She felt the baby kick, a sharp, sudden movement, as if even the unborn child sensed the disaster unfolding. "You are serious," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I am. My father passed away 2 days ago." "I know. I am so sorry for your loss, but that does not change our situation." Our situation, as if their marriage was just some random place they had both accidentally ended up. "I will provide for the baby," he continued, laying out his terms like a contract. "Financially, I will not abandon that responsibility, but as for you and me, we are finished. I have met someone else. Over. Just like that." She stared at him, truly seeing him for the first time. This was the man she had placed her trust in, the man she had chosen, the man who had promised her forever in front of everyone they loved. And here he was, perfectly calm, dismantling her entire world, as if it were just a stack of paperwork. "I have already spoken with a lawyer," he added. "I will have all the documents prepared by the end of the week. You will not have to do much. Just sign." "Just sign," she echoed, the words tasting like ash. "Yes, I am trying to make this process easy for you." Easy. She felt a primal urge to scream, to hurl something across the room. She wanted to demand how he could do this to her, right now, in this way, without even a shred of remorse. But she held back, because in that instant, a piece of her father's wisdom surfaced in her memory. When a person reveals their true character, believe them the first time. Marcus had just shown her exactly who he was, and she believed him. "Okay," she said. He blinked, clearly surprised. He had obviously prepared for a fight. "Okay, yes. If that is what you want, then okay." He stood up, a wave of relief washing over his face. "I truly think this is the best decision for both of us." She offered no response. He walked out of the room, then out of the apartment, leaving her completely alone, 6 months pregnant. It was in that moment of silence that she recalled her father's last instruction. Go to the bank. She grabbed her coat and walked out the door. Have you ever seen someone kicked when they were already down? If you think abandoning a person in their darkest hour is cruel, stick around, because this story of betrayal is about to take a turn that will make you rethink the meaning of family and fortune. The bank did not look like a typical bank. It felt more like a vault for long-held secrets. Maya moved through the lobby, past towering marble pillars and shimmering chandeliers that seemed far too grand for an establishment that served ordinary people. Her sneakers made a faint squeaking sound on the polished floor. She felt completely out of place, as if she was not dressed properly and was not prepared for what was to come. A woman in a perfectly tailored suit approached her before she could even get to the main desk. Miss Richardson? Maya paused. Yes, we have been expecting you. Please, come with me. She had not called to make an appointment, had not notified anyone she was coming, yet somehow they knew. The woman led her past the main counter, through a security door that opened with a key card, and down a corridor that was unnervingly silent. They entered a private, windowless room. A man who appeared to be in his 60s stood up as she came in. He had gray hair, kind eyes, and the type of deep calm that only comes from having seen everything in life at least twice. Mammy, Miss Richardson, he said in a gentle voice, my name is Victor Kane. I was your father's account manager for 32 years. I am deeply sorry for your loss. She could only nod, a lump forming in her throat. He told me to come here. Just before he... She could not bring herself to finish the sentence. Victor motioned toward a chair. He knew that you would. He left very specific instructions. He then placed a small metal box on the table that separated them. The words, Safety Deposit Box, number 1247, were engraved on its surface. This box requires 2 keys to open, Victor explained, taking one from his jacket pocket. Yours should have been with his personal belongings. Maya reached into her purse and pulled out the envelope the hospital had given her. Inside was her father's wedding band, his watch, and a small brass key that she had not understood the purpose of until this very moment. She passed it to Victor. He inserted both keys into the lock and turned them at the same time. The lock made a distinct clicking sound. Victor lifted the lid of the box and then took a step back. I will leave you to have some privacy. Please, take all the time you need. He then left the room, closing the door behind him. Maya stared down at the box. Inside, there was a stack of papers fastened together with a black clip, a sealed envelope with her name on it in her father's handwriting. And underneath everything, something that made her gasp. They were old photographs. One showed her father, looking young, perhaps 25, standing before a massive mansion. He was wearing a suit that cost more than anything she had ever seen him in her entire life, and he was surrounded by people who looked as if they owned the entire world. She turned to the next item, a yellowed newspaper clipping that was still readable. Hartwell heir vanishes after family dispute. She looked at the date, which was 34 years ago. The name printed under the headline was James Hartwell III. She looked back at the photograph. It was definitely her father, but the name was not his. Her hands trembled as she reached for the documents. The first page was a legal trust that had been created 28 years ago and updated just 3 weeks before her father passed away. The beneficiary was listed as Maya Richardson. The trustee was Victor Kane. She quickly read through legal terms that she did not quite comprehend. Words like irrevocable and protected interest and a spousal exclusion clause. Then, at the bottom of the third page, she saw a number. She had to read it twice and then a third time because it simply could not be real. Her father, the man who had worked as a janitor for 35 years, had left her something that made no sense at all. It was not a house, and it was not a savings account. It was an empire. With unsteady hands, she opened the envelope. The letter inside was on plain paper. There was no logo or letterhead, just her father's neat script, which always slanted slightly to the right when he wrote carefully. Baby girl, if you are reading this, it means I am gone. And I am so sorry that I could not tell you this myself. But some truths are easier to accept once you have lived enough to understand why they are so important. My name was not always James Richardson. I was born James Hartwell III, the heir to a family that cared more about legacy than love, and more about control than character. My father built an empire. My grandfather made it even bigger, and I was simply expected to carry it on. There were no questions, no other paths, and no choices of my own. When I was 26, I met your mother. She was working in a bookstore near the university. She always wore her hair in a braid and read poetry on her lunch breaks. She made me laugh in a way I never knew I needed to. She did not care about my last name or the money. She cared about the person I was when no one else was around. I wanted to marry her. My family refused. It was not because she was not good enough for them, but because she was not part of their grand plan. They wanted alliances, corporate mergers, and arrangements that would look impressive in business publications. So, they presented me with a choice: the family fortune or the future that I truly wanted. I chose her, and they made certain that I paid a price for that decision. Maya paused her reading to wipe the tears from her eyes, and then continued. They cut me off from everything, publicly disowned me, and erased my name from every family record as if I had never even existed. I changed my name and found work that did not require a background check or connections. I started my life over with nothing but the woman I loved and the firm belief that a good life does not come from money. It comes from having meaning. Your mother and I had 6 wonderful years together before she passed away while bringing you into this world. And those 6 years were the richest of my entire life. But there is a part of the story that they never knew, a part I took care of before I walked away from them for good. I did not just abandon the fortune, I completely restructured it. I hid it away within such complex legal protections that not even they could get to it. I gave control to someone I trusted without question, and then I waited. I did not do it because I wanted revenge, but because I knew that one day you might need it. The money grew silently and strategically, managed by people who knew that true wealth is not about what you can spend. It is about security, and it is about having options. This was my gift to you. The power to defend yourself against the kind of people I left behind. People who only see worth in what they can take from you. I wanted you to grow up free from that poison. I needed you to discover yourself before you discovered what you possessed. I wanted you to fall in love for the right reasons and to forge your character when nobody else was looking. Now that you know the truth, there is something else you must grasp. This is not about changing who you are. It is about giving you the means to remain exactly who you are, without compromise, without fear, and without ever needing to ask for anyone's permission. Maya placed the letter on the table. Her father had not been running from his wealth. He had been shielding her from it, waiting for the one moment she would need it the most. The other documents explained everything in language that was both cold and precise. An irrevocable trust agreement. It was created 6 months after her father adopted his new name. The trust was updated every 5 years. Its last revision was 3 weeks before he passed away, just after he received the diagnosis that confirmed his time was short. Maya read each line with care, making sure she understood every word. The trust was not just cash sitting in a bank. It was a fortress meticulously constructed from legal terms and forward-thinking strategy. Every single asset was secured within legal entities, making them untouchable by lawsuits, divorce claims, or debt collectors. Her name appeared on nothing public. There were no tax records or property deeds that could lead back to her. Victor Kane, the man who presented her with the box, was named as the trustee. He had complete power to manage, invest, and safeguard all of it. However, he could not spend a single cent without her written approval after she reached the age of 25. She had turned 25 3 months earlier. One particular section caught her eye. It was called the Spousal Exclusion Clause. She read it a second time, trying to decipher the complex legal phrasing. And then it clicked. If she ever married, her husband would have absolutely no claim to her assets. Everything was hers, and hers alone, permanently beyond his reach. This was not a punishment or a sign of mistrust in a future husband. It was the ultimate form of protection. Her father had watched too many rich families get destroyed by bitter divorces. He had constructed a firewall around her future that no one could ever penetrate. Not a gold digger, not a persuasive scammer, and not even a good-hearted husband from a marriage that just happened to fail. A spouse was entitled to nothing, not the original assets, not the income they generated, nothing at all. The trust belonged only to her, designed to protect her from anyone who might try to get to it through her. Her father had intentionally written it this way because he anticipated, not Marcus specifically, but the eventual arrival of someone like him, someone who would appear full of a charm and empty promises, only to vanish when life became challenging. The trust was designed to provide her with money whenever she needed it. But once she received those funds, they became her own separate property as defined by state law. Marcus would never be able to touch that money. He could not claim it in a divorce. Not now, not ever. Her father had foreseen this kind of situation. He did not know the exact details, but he recognized the pattern. And he had spent 30 years ensuring that no one could ever wound her the way his own family had tried to wound him. The document contained other rules as well. There were sections about her future children, safeguards in case she ever became unable to make decisions for herself, and guidance on how the fortune should be used if she decided to use it. A single phrase was repeated throughout the entire document. The beneficiary maintained sole and absolute discretion. In simple terms, it was all hers to do with as she pleased. No one could dictate how she should spend it, invest it, or give it away, and no one ever had to know it even existed. She thought of Marcus, of the divorce papers he said he would have ready by the end of the week, and how he presented it as if he were doing her a kindness. He was completely clueless. He had no idea who her father truly was. He had no idea about the inheritance she had just received. He had no idea that the woman he was so easily discarding now held more power than he could ever hope to gain in his entire lifetime. The real question was not if she had the means to retaliate. The real question was if she even wanted to. Her father's advice echoed in her thoughts. True power comes from knowing you do not have to use it. But she was not entirely convinced. Power does not make a grand entrance. It is patient. And so, she would be patient too. She picked up the letter once more. 2 more pages were left. Now that you know what you possess, you need to understand something far more important. What you are. This money is not your identity. It never will be. You were built from different materials, from strong values, from sacrifice, and from seeing what happens when a person chooses love over a legacy. I did not raise you with nothing as a punishment. I raised you with simplicity as a lesson. You understand what it means to earn something, to be patient, to live without, and to make decisions based on what is important rather than what is convenient. Most people who are born with wealth never learn that. They mistake their resources for their character. They believe money gives them power, when all it really does is make them loud. You are not like them. You know that real strength is not about what you own. It is about what you do when you have lost everything. And now that you have everything, I need you to hold on to that lesson, because this is what will happen. People will eventually learn the truth. It will not be immediate, but it will happen someday. And when that day comes, you will finally see them for who they truly are. The people who were with you when you had nothing will be with you when you have everything. The people who abandoned you will try to crawl back into your life, and the people who misjudged you will suddenly want a second chance. Let them, not because you owe them anything, but because watching people reveal their true selves is one of the most priceless educations life can offer. Some will be angry that you kept this from them. Let them feel their anger. You are not required to give anyone access to your life or justifications for your privacy. Some will expect you to change, to become arrogant, wasteful, or entitled. Prove them wrong by continuing to be exactly the person you have always been. And then there will be some who underestimate you completely. They will see your quiet nature as a weakness. They will confuse your kindness with foolishness. They will assume that because you do not flaunt what you have, you must not have anything worth flaunting. Those are the ones to watch. Not because they can harm you financially. You are safe from that now. They are dangerous because they will challenge your character, and your response to them will define the kind of person you become. So, this is my true inheritance to you. Patience. The strength to endure discomfort without reacting. The wisdom to let people believe what they want while you create something they can never take away. The discipline to remain silent when the world expects you to scream. Revenge is simple. Any fool with money can ruin someone's life, but discipline and restraint, the choice to not wield your power even when you have every right to, that is what is truly rare. That is a legacy. I love you, my baby girl. I always have, and I always will. You are going to be more than fine. Dad? Maya folded the letter with steady hands and slid it back inside its envelope. She did not weep. She did not feel a surge of rage. She did not call Marcus to tell him he had just made the biggest mistake of his entire life. She simply sat there, with her hands resting on her belly, feeling her daughter stirring beneath her ribs, and realized her father was correct. Some fights are not worth your energy, because the people who deserve to fail will get there all by themselves. They do not need your help to self-destruct. Victor came back 20 minutes later. He knocked gently on the door before he came in, allowing her a moment to collect herself. "Do you have any questions?" he asked softly. "Just one," Maya said. "How much is there?" He took a seat across from her and produced a single sheet of paper with a summary she could easily follow. It listed stocks, bonds, real estate properties, private equity ventures, and international holdings. The investments were spread across 12 different countries. The assets had been gathered strategically over 34 years. They were managed discreetly, never with flash or recklessness. The total value as of the last financial quarter was $5.2 billion. The number just sat there on the page, a fact her mind refused to accept. She stared at it, read it one more time, and tried to reconcile this figure with the man who raised her in a small one-bedroom apartment and sent her to school with lunches packed in old grocery bags. "That is impossible," she whispered. "That is a conservative estimate," Victor said. "Your father avoided high-risk ventures. He always chose stability over rapid growth. If he had been willing to take more chances, this amount would be considerably larger." She felt a wave of dizziness. "What am I supposed to do with it?" Victor offered a sad but comforting smile. "Anything you want. That is the entire point. You could live on the interest and never spend the original amount. You could give it all away tomorrow. Or you could choose to forget it exists. It belongs to you completely. Does anyone else know about this? Only me. And now you," he confirmed. "Your father made certain of that." She thought of Marcus again. She pictured the divorce he was so eager to finalize, and how he had offered to help support their baby as if he were a saint. He had no idea, and she had no intention of ever telling him. "I want to keep this private," she said with resolve. "Nobody else needs to know." Victor nodded. That is a wise decision. When you are ready, we can arrange for distributions. Until that time, everything will remain exactly as it is. She stood up, shook his hand, and walked out of the bank the same way she had come in, alone, unsure, and grieving, but fundamentally changed. Because she now understood something that Marcus never would. The woman he had abandoned was not broken. She was fortified, and patience, just as her father had taught her, was the most powerful weapon a person could ever possess. 3 weeks after that day, the courthouse photos appeared online. It was Marcus and Isabel, quickly married, making a public display of it, smiling as if they had just won a grand prize. The comments started pouring in immediately. Wow, that was fast. Did his wife not just lose her father? Some people truly have no shame. Maya saw the pictures, felt the familiar sting of betrayal, but she did not reply. She simply carried on with her life. She went to her doctor's appointments. She set up the nursery, and she read her father's letter again and again until she knew every single word by heart. Whenever anyone inquired how she was holding up, she would offer a small smile and give the same answer each time. I am doing just fine. And the truth was, she was. This was not because the sting of his deception did not hurt, but because she understood a lesson Marcus never would. True strength does not perform for a crowd. It simply bides its time. Think about how real power remains silent until the moment it is required. Most people will shout their capabilities from the rooftops the minute they acquire them. The ones who have truly earned that strength, however, know better. Marcus moved quickly. The divorce was pushed through in just 43 days. His new wedding took place 12 days later. Maya put her signature on every document without a single protest. She made no request for financial support. She did not contest the few possessions they had. She accepted what was hers, which in legal terms was practically nothing, and allowed him to leave believing he had acted like a reasonable man. He made one public post about it, a carefully crafted message about embracing the future with grace and choosing his own happiness. The comments poured in, a mix of supportive and disgusted replies. Good for you. Life is too short. You could not even wait 6 months. Her father just passed away. This is exactly why marriage is losing its meaning. Isabel also made a post. It was a photograph of her hand, showing off a brand new ring. The caption read, "When you know, you just know." The internet certainly had opinions, and they were very strong. Maya became the subject of gossip at social gatherings. The pregnant wife whose husband abandoned her, the woman who remained completely silent, the one everyone was watching, just waiting for her to finally crumble. Her husband had left her immediately following her father's funeral. The story was sympathetic, tragic, and a little pathetic. She learned of the chatter through the grapevine. Friends were unsure of what to say. Acquaintances sent her uncomfortable text messages. Complete strangers online debated if Marcus was a monster or simply a man being honest with himself. She never corrected the narrative, never defended her position, and never explained that she was fine. In fact, she was better than fine. She simply kept her focus and remained patient, because her father had taught her a lesson most people never grasp. Public perception is fleeting, but a person's true character is permanent. And in that moment, Marcus was revealing his character to the world. She did not have to utter a single word. By the 7th month of her pregnancy, the public chatter had eventually faded. People had found newer scandals and more recent drama to focus on, someone else's messy public separation. Maya filled her days by assembling the crib, folding baby clothes, and reading books on childbirth that were equally terrifying and comforting. Victor called her once a week to check on her, ensuring she had everything she could possibly need. She always told him yes, even when the truth was far more complex. She was not having money problems. Victor had arranged for a discreet, monthly stipend that easily covered her rent, food, and medical expenses without drawing any attention. But she was having a hard time emotionally, not because of Marcus, but because of the silence surrounding her father. Her father was gone. Her husband was now gone. And the one person who could have truly understood her situation was a man she would never get to know, the version of her father who had faced the same impossible decision 30 years before. Then, one Tuesday in late September, something showed up in her mail. It was a cream-colored envelope made of thick, expensive paper. Her name was written in beautiful calligraphy, and there was no return address. She opened it with care. Inside, she found an invitation that read, "You are cordially invited to the inaugural event of the Richardson Hartwell Foundation." Her breath hitched in her throat. She had to read it a second time. Richardson Hartwell was her father's birth name, and it was hers as well. The event was set for October 14th. It was a black tie affair at a private location with a limited number of guests. At the very bottom, in smaller letters, it said, "Your presence is requested as the Foundation's primary honoree." She had absolutely no clue what this meant. Victor had never spoken of a foundation. Her father's letter had not mentioned one either. She grabbed her phone and immediately called Victor. He picked up before the second ring. "You received the invitation," he stated. It was not a question. "What is this all about?" It was your father's last endeavor. He spent 2 years planning it before his illness. I have been carrying out his wishes since he passed. It is time. Time for what? Victor paused for a moment before he said softly, "It is time for everyone to know who you truly are." Her pulse raced. "I never agreed to any of this. You are not required to do anything that makes you uncomfortable, but the event is definitely happening, and the guest list is already set." "Who is on the list?" There was another silence. "Everyone who is important, and that includes Marcus." The official announcement was released 3 days later. A professional and polished press release was sent to local news outlets and nonprofit groups all over the state. The Richardson Hartwell Foundation is launching with a $50 million endowment to focus on educational access, career development, and assistance for single-parent families. The newly formed Richardson Hartwell Foundation will be holding its first fundraising gala next month. The foundation celebrates the legacy of James Richardson, who dedicated more than 30 years to serving his community in quiet but impactful ways. The article featured a photograph of her father, but not in his janitor's work clothes. It was a picture from many years ago, showing him in a suit, looking like a man who belonged in a corporate boardroom. The people who knew him were confused. "Wait, is that the gentleman from the elementary school? I had no idea he was wealthy. Where is this money coming from?" The press release did not give an answer. It named Victor Kane as the executive director and listed a board of advisors with names nobody in the area recognized. It also made reference to an anonymous founding contributor whose donation had made the whole project possible. The community's reaction was cautious, a mix of curiosity and doubt. $50 million does not just materialize out of thin air, and James Richardson, the man who mopped hallways and repaired plumbing, did not seem like the kind of person with access to that level of fortune. Rumors began to fly. Some people believed it was a fraud. Others were convinced it was financed by a famous person or a politician who was just using her father's good name. Still others assumed Maya had received a large settlement from Marcus and was now trying to repair her public image. Not a single person guessed the truth because the truth was simply too fantastic to be believed. Maya observed all of this happening from afar. She made no comments, offered no clarifications, and did not participate in any of the speculation. Victor was managing every detail. He handled all press inquiries, event planning, and vendor agreements. The only thing she needed to do was be there, but the guest list weighed heavily on her mind. Victor had sent it to her in an encrypted email. There were 200 names, including donors, community figures, and local officials, people her father had known throughout his life. And there, near the end of the list, was the entry, Marcus Chun +1. Her stomach dropped. "Why is he on this list?" she asked Victor on the phone. "Your father specifically asked for him to be there." "What?" "He left behind a list of instructions. Precise names. Marcus was one of them." "That makes absolutely no sense. Dad passed away before Marcus even asked for a divorce." "Your father was a very good judge of character," Victor explained with care. "He had a way of seeing things before they unfolded." She let that sink in, trying to make sense of it. Her father had known. Maybe he did not know the specifics, but he knew it was a possibility. And he had arranged for Marcus to be present on the night the truth would be revealed. It was not about payback, it was about enlightenment. "I am not sure I can go through with this," Maya confessed. "You do not have to," Victor assured her. "But if you decide not to go, you will always wonder what might have been." She thought about her father's letter, his words about patience and about allowing people to show their true colors. "He will bring Isabel," she said softly. "I am sure people will gossip." "They are already gossiping." She let out a long breath and felt the baby move inside her. She placed a hand over her stomach. "All right," she finally said. "I will be there." "Excellent," Victor responded. "Because this night is not about him. It is about you, and it is time for people to finally see the distinction." The location was breathtaking. It was a historic mansion that had been transformed into a venue for special events. Chandeliers hung like cascades of crystal. The floors were so glossy they mirrored the ceiling above. The tables were draped in fine linens that likely cost more than an average person's rent. Maya showed up 30 minutes before the event was scheduled to begin. Victor was waiting for her at a private entrance. He looked at her once and broke into a smile. "You look absolutely perfect," he told her. She had picked her outfit with great care. It was an emerald green gown with an empire waist that flattered her very pregnant figure. Her hair was styled in a simple updo. She wore almost no jewelry, except for one item, a diamond necklace that had been stored in the safety deposit box. It was a vintage piece, elegant and subtle, unless you understood its true worth. She did not know its monetary value. She only knew it had belonged to her grandmother, the woman her father's relatives had cut out of their lives, right along with him. Wearing it felt like the right thing to do. "How are you feeling?" Victor asked. "I am terrified," she confessed. "Good. That's a good sign. It means you understand what is at stake." The guests began to filter in. Maya watched them from a secluded room that had a one-way window with a view of the grand hall. She spotted familiar faces, including members of her father's church, his former colleagues, and neighbors who had been part of his life for years. And then she spotted Marcus. He entered with Isabel on his arm. Isabella was wearing a striking red dress, looking bold and self-assured, the type of woman who enters a space and expects all eyes to be on her. Marcus seemed out of place, not because of the fancy event, but because he clearly did not know why he was there. He scanned the crowd, likely searching for Maya, but did not see her. Isabel guided him toward the bar. They got their drinks and offered smiles to strangers, putting on a performance as the happy, thriving couple. Maya could feel her heart pounding in her throat. Victor suddenly appeared at her side. "You do not have to go out there just yet. We can wait until the program has started." No, Maya replied in a low voice. I want to enter just like all the other guests. Are you certain? She gave a firm nod, remembering an important lesson from her father. Being confident is not about feeling prepared. It is about taking the next step, even when you are not. She departed from the private room, walked along a corridor, and paused at the doorway to the grand hall. She took one deep breath, and then she walked through the doors. The room did not fall silent all at once, but a change rippled through the crowd. Have you ever seen someone completely underestimate the wrong person? Imagine your husband leaves you while you are 6 months pregnant, right after your father has died. He says you are too much of a burden and walks away, absolutely certain that you have nothing. That is the devastating injustice that happened to Maya. This story is about the quiet power of integrity, and it is a powerful lesson in why you should never, ever count someone out. If you believe that character is more valuable than cash, stick with me to see one of the most satisfying moments of vindication you will ever hear. Months later, Maya walked into a crowded room. Conversations stopped. People stared, not because she made a grand entrance, but because she was very obviously pregnant and completely alone. She saw the looks of recognition spread through the guests. Then she saw Marcus. His face went blank, then confused, then something that looked a lot like panic. His new partner, Isabel, whispered something to him, but he just stared at Maya. Maya ignored him. She moved with calm dignity to a reserved seat near the front, sat down, and folded her hands over her belly. Just breathe. An older woman with a kind face approached her. You must be Maya, she said softly. I am. Your father talked about you all the time. I am so sorry for your loss. Thank you, Maya managed to say. The woman smiled warmly. He would be so proud of you tonight. A lump formed in Maya's throat. She could only give a small nod in response. More people came by to offer their condolences and share fond memories of her father. And through it all, Marcus sat across the room, frozen. A terrible feeling was dawning on him. This was not some random event he had decided to attend. This was her event, and he had absolutely no idea what was coming next. The lights in the room began to dim. A microphone was set up on a small stage. A man named Victor stepped up to it. Good evening, he started. Thank you all for coming. Tonight is not just about launching a new foundation. It is about honoring a man who lived his values every day, even when nobody was watching. Victor spoke about her father, about his dedication, his quiet kindness, and his reliability. People throughout the room nodded in agreement. Some of them wiped away tears. Then Victor's tone shifted. What most of you do not know, he continued, is that James Richardson made a profound choice 34 years ago. He walked away from a life of immense wealth and privilege because he refused to compromise when it came to love. He changed his name, started from scratch, and built a new life based on his character, not his inheritance. Confused whispers moved through the audience. Marcus leaned forward just a little, suddenly paying very close attention. That choice cost him everything his family thought was important, Victor went on, but it gave him something far more valuable, his integrity, and a daughter who inherited his principles instead of his fortune. Victor paused, letting his words sink in. The Richardson Hartwell Foundation exists because James never forgot where he came from, and because he spent 3 decades making sure his daughter would have the ability to build something meaningful, free from the weight of expectation or entitlement. He then turned and gestured toward Maya. It is my great honor to introduce the Foundation's founder and its primary benefactor, Maya Richardson. Polite applause started, but it grew louder as people began to understand. Maya stood up slowly and walked to the stage with deliberate steps. She could see the expression on Marcus's face shifting in real time. His confusion was turning into comprehension, and that comprehension was quickly turning into pure horror. He was finally connecting all the pieces. Richardson Hartwell, her father's real name, the $50 million endowment, the foundation, it was all her. Isabel looked over at him, baffled by his strange reaction. He offered no explanation. He just sat there, watching the woman he had abandoned. The woman who was 6 months pregnant, grieving, and who he thought was broken. He watched her walk onto a stage in front of 200 people who now understood the truth. She was not a victim. She was a legacy. Maya got to the microphone and adjusted its height. The entire room became completely silent. She did not look at Marcus. She looked out at the people who had loved her father, the ones who had come tonight to honor his kindness. Then she began to speak. Her voice was perfectly steady. It was not loud or dramatic, just incredibly clear. My father taught me that the most important decisions we make are the ones that nobody else ever sees. She paused, letting the thought settle. He taught me that love is not about what is convenient. It is about showing up, especially when it is difficult, especially when no one is watching, and especially when you have every single reason to walk away. A few people in the audience nodded slowly. He also taught me, she continued, that wealth without character is just noise, that true power is not about what you possess. It is about what you do with it when no one is forcing you to do anything at all. She glanced down at her notes and took a quiet breath. Most of you knew my father as a janitor, a maintenance man. He was someone who always showed up early, stayed late, and never once asked for any recognition. She looked back up at the crowd. What you did not know is that he was born into one of the wealthiest families on the East Coast. He was supposed to inherit an entire empire, and he gave it all up because the people who control that wealth told him that love was not worth it. There were audible gasps and whispers. He proved them wrong. Her voice never wavered. He spent 34 years as living proof that a good life is not measured by your assets. It is measured by your integrity. And when he passed away, he left me something far more valuable than money. She paused again. The room was so still you could hear a pin drop. He left me a choice. I could have kept all of this a secret. I could have taken what he built for me and just disappeared. Nobody would have ever known. Nobody would have cared. She then looked directly into the eyes of the people in the audience. But my father did not hide his wealth because he was ashamed of it. He hid it because he wanted me to grow up understanding who I was before I understood what I had. She let that powerful idea fill the room. And now that I know both, I am choosing to do what he would have done. I will build something that matters. I will help people who have been underestimated. I will support families who do not have a safety net. At that moment, Victor placed a formal document on the podium next to her. The Richardson Hartwell Foundation has been endowed with an initial gift of $50 million, Maya announced, with a long-term structure designed to grow that into sustained generational impact. Applause began to swell through the room, but she was not finished yet. That $50 million, she said clearly, represents less than 1% of the total trust my father established in my name. The applause died instantly. People started looking at each other, trying to do the math in their heads. The full valuation, as of the last quarter, she stated, is $5.2 billion. There was complete silence. It was not the silence of shock, but the silence of a profound reckoning. She did not smile. She did not gloat. She just stated it as the simple fact it was. I am not telling you this to impress you, she said. I am telling you this to make something very clear. My father did not raise me to be rich. He raised me to be responsible, and that is exactly what I intend to be. She then stepped back from the microphone. The applause that came next was not just polite, it was thunderous. People got to their feet, clapping, with some even crying. Maya walked calmly off the stage and returned to her seat. Across the room, Marcus sat completely still. The color had drained from his face. His hands were gripping the edge of the table so tightly his knuckles were white. Isabel was trying to say something to him, but he was not listening. He was doing math in his head. The woman he had left, thinking she had nothing, had just revealed that she controlled more wealth than he could ever touch in 10 lifetimes. And he had simply walked away, not because she was not enough, but because he had never bothered to truly know her. If you have ever underestimated someone just because they were quiet, this is a moment to sit with that discomfort. Subscribe if you believe that loyalty and character still matter, because this story is not over just yet. Marcus tried to leave. The second Maya stepped off the stage, he stood up, grabbed Isabella's hand, and mumbled something about needing some fresh air. But Victor was quicker. He did not block his path, but he was suddenly there, standing near the exit with a calm smile on his face. It was a calm, knowing look that said everything without saying a single word. Marcus froze. Isabel looked at him, confused. "What is wrong?" He did not answer. He could not, because what could he possibly say? That the woman he had divorced only 8 weeks ago, the one he had abandoned while she was grieving and pregnant, had just been revealed as one of the wealthiest people in the entire state? That he had walked away from billions of dollars because he could not be bothered to stick with her through a hard time, that every single decision he had made for the past 6 months had been based on a completely wrong assumption about who really held the power? Isabel tugged on his arm. "Marcus, talk to me." He sat back down like a robot, feeling completely numb. All around them, people were celebrating. They were talking excitedly about the foundation, about Maya's incredible composure, and about her father's amazing story. Someone nearby said, "Can you imagine walking away from that much money just to marry the person you loved? That is so rare." Another person added, "And to raise a daughter who turned out to be that grounded, that is even rarer." Marcus heard every single word. Each one was a painful reminder of what a failure he had been. He glanced over toward Maya. She was surrounded by people now, thanking her, hugging her, and offering their support. She looked tired, but she also looked incredibly steady. She did not look in his direction even once. It was not out of spite. It was because he simply did not matter to her anymore. Isabel finally put the pieces together. "Wait," she said slowly. "That is your ex-wife." He nodded. "The one you said had nothing." He did not respond. She pulled her hand away from his, staring at him. "Marcus, how much did you know about this?" "Nothing," he said quietly. "I knew nothing." "You did not ask," she stated. He looked at her and saw the shift in her eyes as it was happening. He saw the recalculation. She was not angry with him. She was evaluating him. She was wondering if she had made a huge mistake by aligning herself with someone who could miscalculate something so badly. He saw it, and he felt it. He realized this must have been how Maya felt. Watching someone you trusted suddenly reassess your value based on new information. It was humiliating. "I need to talk to her," he said suddenly. "Do not," Isabel warned him. "I have to." "Marcus, leave it alone." But he was already on his feet, moving toward Maya's table. Victor intercepted him smoothly, his manner polite, but unmistakably firm. "She is not available right now. I just need 5 minutes." "She is not interested." Marcus's jaw tightened. "You cannot speak for her." "I do not have to," Victor replied. "She asked me to make sure you understood. There is nothing to discuss." The words hit him like a closing door. Final, permanent. Marcus stood there, completely useless, while the woman he had underestimated continued her conversations with people who actually mattered to her. He had wanted closure, or an explanation, or maybe even some kind of forgiveness. But Maya did not owe him any of those things, and she was certainly not going to give them to him. 10 minutes later, she left quietly through a side exit. There was no grand goodbye. She was just gone. Marcus watched her go and understood, for the very first time in his life, what it felt like to be completely and utterly irrelevant. Naomi Grace Richardson arrived on a Thursday. She was 7 pounds and 4 ounces, with dark hair and her grandfather's eyes. The hospital room felt perfectly still as Maya held her for the very first time. There was no husband pacing the halls, no family in the waiting room, only Victor, who had insisted on being there. A nurse named Petra even stayed after her shift ended, believing that no one should be alone during such a profound moment. Petra whispered, "She is perfect." Maya could not find her voice. She just nodded as tears streamed down her face, thinking of how her father should have been there. He should have been the one to hold his granddaughter and see the life he fought so hard to protect finally begin. The baby's weight in her arms felt like a promise she had kept, a future he had secured, even if he was not there to witness it. She gazed down at Naomi's face, which held a universe of possibilities. "My little girl," she whispered, "I have got you." But her father was gone, and Maya knew, somehow, she had to be enough for the both of them. She looked at Naomi again, gently tracing the outline of her tiny fingers, memorizing every detail of her face. "Your grandfather loved you long before you were born," she whispered softly, "and he made sure you would have a life that was safe, protected, and free." Naomi let out a yawn, impossibly small and impossibly complete. Victor moved a little closer, his eyes filled with a grandfather's tenderness as he looked at the baby. "James would have been so proud," he said quietly. "You did a good thing, Maya." She let out a long, slow breath. "I do not feel like I did anything but survive." He replied, "That is more than most people ever manage." Maya remained in the hospital for 2 days, where she learned to nurse, change diapers, and somehow get by on just 2 hours of sleep. Marcus sent flowers, a generic bouquet with a simple card that read, "Congratulations. Wishing you both well." She threw them in the trash, not because she was angry, but because the gesture was meaningless. It was an empty act from a man who had already made it clear how distant he wanted to be. Around that same time, Isabel posted a picture on social media. It showed her and Marcus at brunch, both of them smiling. The caption read, "Choosing joy every day." Maya did not even bother to read the comments. She had more important things to concentrate on. When she finally brought Naomi home, the apartment felt completely different. It seemed smaller and quieter, yet it was filled with a presence that had not been there before. She placed the bassinet beside her bed and hung the mobile her father had purchased months before he fell ill. He had carved the wooden animals himself during late nights when he could not sleep. She had discovered them in his apartment after he passed away, wrapped with care and attached to a note that said, "For when she arrives." Now, those animals dangled above his granddaughter, turning slowly and casting gentle shadows on the wall. Maya sat in the rocking chair, holding Naomi tightly. She sang the same song her father used to sing to her as a child, whenever she had trouble sleeping. And for the first time since he was gone, she felt something that resembled peace. It was not because the sadness had disappeared, but because she was finally starting to grasp what he had been trying to show her all those years. A legacy is not about the things you leave behind. It is about the people you raise to carry on. The foundation expanded more quickly than anyone had anticipated. In just 6 months, they had provided scholarships for 40 students, launched a center for workforce training, and formed partnerships with 3 local nonprofits to offer emergency aid to single parents dealing with eviction or medical bills. Maya managed it all without fanfare. There were no press tours, no ribbon-cutting events, and no speeches unless they were absolutely required. She simply showed up, made the important decisions, signed the checks that changed people's lives, and then went home to be with her daughter. People began to know who she was, not as some kind of celebrity, but as a person who genuinely made a difference. A woman once came up to her in a grocery store. She was in her late 30s, and her eyes were filled with tears. "You paid for my son's tuition," she said, her voice trembling. "I do not know if you remember him, but he is the first one in our family to ever go to college. And it happened because of you." Maya gave her a gentle smile. "It happened because of your son. He earned it." The woman insisted, "No, it is because someone believed he was worth the investment. Thank you." Moments like that became a regular occurrence. There were letters, emails, and chance meetings with people whose entire lives had been altered because the foundation was there to help. Maya saved every single letter. She would read them on difficult days when she started to doubt if any of it truly made a difference. It did. Not because of the money itself, but because of what the money allowed to happen. Her father had been correct. Wealth without a clear purpose is just meaningless noise. But wealth that is used with intention, that is how you build a legacy. By the time Naomi celebrated her first birthday, the foundation had reached into 3 different counties. Victor was in charge of operations. Maya was in charge of the vision. And after a while, people stopped wondering where the money came from. They were just grateful that it was always there when needed. Marcus would hear about her work from time to time through mutual friends, on social media, and by seeing Maya's name appear in circles that made him feel uneasy. He tried to make a donation one time, a check for $5,000. He sent it by mail directly to the foundation's office. Victor mailed it right back to him. There was no letter of explanation, just the uncashed check and a note with a single word: declined. Marcus never made another attempt. Isabel left him 14 months after the gala. It was not a dramatic breakup, but a practical one. She had come to understand what Maya had figured out long ago. Marcus was the type of man who would trade up when he thought he had found something better, and then trade down the instant he realized he had made a mistake. She had no interest in being the next person he would underestimate. The divorce was handled quickly and quietly. Hardly anyone even took notice, because by that point, Marcus had become exactly what Maya predicted he would be: irrelevant. It was not because she had set out to destroy him, but simply because she had moved on with her life without him. And by doing that, she had turned him into a mere footnote in a story that was never really about him in the first place. Marcus saw Naomi one time completely by chance. He was taking a walk through a park near his office when he noticed them. Maya was pushing a stroller. Naomi, who was probably about 18 months old, was pointing at the birds and chattering with excitement. Maya looked different. She seemed stronger, more at ease with herself than she ever had when they were married. He almost went over to them. He almost said something, but then he saw that Victor was there too. He was walking right beside them, laughing at something Naomi said, being present in a way that Marcus had never been. He stayed where he was, just watching from afar. Naomi had Maya's smile and her father's eyes. She looked healthy, joyful, and deeply loved. Marcus felt a strange, twisting sensation in his chest. It was not quite jealousy, but something closer to recognition. He had been given the opportunity to be a part of this, to be the man pushing that stroller, to hear his own daughter's laughter, to build a life that had meaning. And he had chosen otherwise. It was not because Maya was not enough, but because he had told himself she was too much effort. He had wanted something easy, convenient, and simple. What he ended up with was empty. Isabel was gone. His professional reputation had taken a series of quiet blows. He did not grasp the full extent of it until people just stopped returning his calls. The life he thought he was upgrading to felt more hollow with each passing year. In that same time, Maya had built something that could not be denied. She did not do it loudly or out of revenge, but just with quiet consistency. The foundation continued to grow. Her name kept coming up in important contexts, like education panels, nonprofit boards, and community planning committees. She never went looking for recognition. It simply found her, because people will always respect competence, and she had demonstrated hers time and time again. Marcus, on the other hand, had stalled. His career hit a plateau. His relationships never went beyond the surface. His life felt more like a performance he was putting on rather than something he was actually living. He would sometimes think about getting in touch, about sending an apology, about trying to make her understand. But what could he possibly say? "I am sorry I left you when things became difficult. I am sorry that I did not recognize your true value. I am sorry that I was too arrogant to ask any questions." None of it would make any difference now. Maya had moved on, completely and for good, and he was left to sit with a lesson that had come far too late to do him any good. The years went by. Naomi began kindergarten. The foundation marked its 5th anniversary. Maya's name was featured in a business journal profile with the headline, "The Philanthropist You Have Never Heard Of." The article spoke about her father, the foundation, and all the work it had done. It mentioned Marcus only once, in a passing reference. Richardson was previously married, but has been a single mother since her daughter's birth, choosing to focus on family and philanthropy rather than public relationships. Just one sentence, placing him firmly in footnote territory. He read it over twice. He felt a sharp sting. Not because the words were cruel, but because they were completely accurate. He had been reduced to a minor detail, a brief phase in her life, a person who had been around for a short time and then left before anything truly important began. And the most painful part of it all was that he deserved it. Maya stood inside her father's old apartment one final time before the lease was officially up. 6 years had passed since he died. 6 years of building, of growing, of discovering who she truly was when no one else was there to watch her. Naomi was spending the afternoon with Victor, which gave Maya the chance to close this chapter of her life by herself. She moved through rooms that now seemed smaller than she remembered, running her hand over the kitchen counter, where her father had prepared thousands of meals. She sat on the couch where he had slept for 16 years just so she could have the bedroom. The apartment was completely empty now. The furniture had been donated, and his belongings had been sorted through. The only things left were the memories and a single envelope she had been saving. It was the one Victor had kept for her, waiting until she was ready. She opened it with care. "Baby girl," it began, "if you are reading this, Oshin, it means that enough time has gone by for you to truly understand what I am about to tell you. Loss is not a punishment. It is permission. It is permission to find out who you are when there is no one left to place their expectations on you. It is permission to build something that reflects your own values instead of seeking someone else's approval. It is permission to walk away from people who are unable to see your worth. Not because you are filled with anger, but because you are too busy creating something better. You have spent these past years proving something that I knew all along. That character is not about what you possess. It is about what you do when you possess everything. Some people will claim you were lucky, that you were simply handed wealth, privilege, and opportunity. Let them think that, because they will never grasp that wealth without wisdom is merely money. And you, my daughter, possessed wisdom long before you had any resources. I am so proud of you. Not for your success, but because you remained kind, you remained humble, you remained yourself. That is the true inheritance, love, Dad. She folded the letter with great care, sliding it back into the envelope as she wiped a tear from her eye. Then, she locked the apartment door one last time and stepped out into the bright afternoon sunlight. Naomi was already there, waiting at Victor's office. She ran toward her the second she saw her. "Mama!" Maya swept her into her arms, holding her close. "Did you have a good time? We got ice cream." "Of course you did," Maya said, glancing at Victor with a smile. He simply shrugged with an innocent look. "Grandpa privileges." The three of them walked to the car together. Naomi chattered excitedly about her day. Victor asked her playful questions that sent her into fits of giggles. And as Maya buckled her daughter into the car seat, this small, wonderful person, who would never meet her grandfather, but would be raised with his values, she felt a profound sense of gratitude she had not experienced in years. It was not gratitude for what she was given, but for who she had been allowed to become, because her father had been right all along. Loss was not an ending. It was an authorization. It was permission to choose the person she was meant to be. Without apology, without compromise, and without needing approval from anyone else. And she had chosen very well. If this story made you think about loyalty, patience, or responsibility, subscribing means you are choosing content that helps you grow, not just pass the time. Do not just watch. Learn from it. Hello there, and thank you for watching all the way to the end. We are so grateful for your support. If you found this story meaningful, please remember to like the video, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment below. We are always excited to read your thoughts. And here is some good news. The story does not have to end here. Click on the video that is appearing on your screen right now to jump into another captivating story. Believe me, it is one you do not want to miss. Thank you again for being a cherished member of our amazing community. Until our next story, stay curious and continue to explore the narratives that truly move you. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with valuable life lessons. Every narrative is crafted to entertain, inspire, and empower our audience. We believe that great stories can change lives, and we are committed to bringing you content that matters. Thank you for being part of our community.